جس سے بھی سنے تو وہ ڈراتا ہے کہ نہیں یہ موبائل اچھی چیز نہیں ہے تو اس میں آپ نہ پڑھیں، لیکن جب استعمال کیے تو ہمیں پتہ چلا کہ انٹرنیٹ اچھی چیز ہے، اس کا فائدہ ہے۔ میرا نام سعدیہ ہے اور میری عمر ہے 35 سال۔ میرے 4 بچے ہیں، میں ہوں، میرے ہسبینڈ۔ بس یہ جب ہسبینڈ کا کام نہیں ہوتا تھا تو گھر کے حالات بڑے خراب ہو جاتے تھے۔ حالات میں بچوں کی ایجوکیشن تھی اور پھر گھر کا رینٹ دینا ہوتا تھا، وہ دینا ہوتا، ہر حال میں وہ دینا تھا، بجلی گیس کے بل دینے ہوتے تھے۔ تو میں نے سوچا کہ میں ایسا کچھ کرتی ہوں، انٹرنیٹ پہ کوئی کام کرتی ہوں جس سے کچھ تھوڑی مدد مل جائے، کچھ سہارا مل جائے میرے شوہر کو۔ مہندی بہت اچھی لگاتی ہوں، اس کے بعد میں سلائی بہت اچھی کرتی ہوں، کوکنگ بہت اچھی کرتی ہوں۔ میرے پاس اس سے پہلے موبائل نہیں تھا، کیونکہ ہمارے گھر میں اس چیز کی اجازت بالکل بھی نہیں تھی۔ صرف کال کے لیے انہوں نے کی پیڈ والے موبائل رکھے ہوئے ہیں۔ گھر والے نہیں چاہتے تھے کہ گھریلو خواتین کوئی ایسا کام کریں، لیکن پھر حالات کچھ اتنے خراب ہو گئے کہ کرتے کرتے مجھے کسی کی باتوں کی پرواہ نہیں تھی۔ میں نے کہا میرے ہسبینڈ میرے ساتھ ہیں تو مجھے کسی بات کا کوئی ڈر اور خوف نہیں ہے۔ ایک دن کو ان کا پروگرام تھا، پھر انہوں نے ہمیں بتایا کہ اگر کوئی عورت گھر میں، گھریلو عورت جو کوئی، وہ اگر کوئی کام کرنا چاہتی ہے انٹرنیٹ پہ تو ہم ان کی مدد کریں گے۔ پھر اس کے بعد میرے پاس موبائل آیا تو انسٹاگرام کا جو پیج مجھے انہوں نے بنا کے دیا جیز والوں نے، تو اس پہ میں نے کام کرنا شروع کیا۔ چیز میرے ہسبینڈ کو سمجھ نہیں آتی تھی تو وہ میں جیز والوں سے پوچھ لیتی تھی، جیز والے مجھے بتاتے تھے اس کو کیسے کرنا ہے آپ نے، تو اب میں انسٹا کا پیج خود چلا لیتی ہوں۔ موبائل انٹرنیٹ ہماری یہ مدد کی ہے کہ اگر کسی کو نہیں پتا وہ میرا انسٹاگرام پیج دیکھتے ہیں، وہ چیزیں کرتی ہوں، اپنی ویڈیو وغیرہ بنا کے، مہندی کی ویڈیو بنا کے وہ اپلوڈ کرتی ہوں انسٹاگرام پہ۔ ابھی تو انسٹا پیج پہ میرے تقریباً 900 فالوورز ہیں، تو ان میں سے کچھ لوگوں نے مہندی کے لیے مجھ سے رابطہ بھی کیا، اور ویسے میں جو سلائی کا کام کرتی ہوں وہ لوگ مجھ سے رابطہ کرتے ہیں۔ لڑکیوں کو جو ڈیزائن چاہیے ہوتا ہے، جو بتانا ہوتا ہے، واٹس ایپ پہ وہ مجھے سینڈ کر دیتی ہیں، اس کا مجھے یہ فائدہ ہے۔ میں تو چاہتی ہوں کہ یہاں کی خواتین کے پاس موبائل فون ہوں، وہ انٹرنیٹ سے زیادہ فائدہ حاصل کریں، کیونکہ بہت ہنرمند خواتین ہیں یہاں کی، لیکن یہ ہے کہ ان کے ذہن کو پہلے بنانا پڑے گا اس چیز کے لیے کہ اس میں کوئی بھی برائی نہیں ہے۔ میں چاہتی ہوں کہ مستقبل میں کوئی پارلر کھولنا چاہتی ہوں، یا میں چاہتی ہوں کوئی سلائی سینٹر میں کھولوں، تو انٹرنیٹ کے ذریعے اس کو فروغ دوں۔ ایک دن میں پوری دنیا کو بتا دوں کہ میرے گھر کے حالات بہت خراب تھے، انٹرنیٹ کے ذریعے میں نے اتنی ترقی کی ہے۔
It's such a heartwarming video, hearing how Sadia has learned to use mobile internet to earn an income and support her family despite the challenges she's faced. And there are many women like Sadia who are also using mobile internet to transform their lives across low and middle income countries. In fact, you might not know that in these countries, mobile phones are the most common way that people access the internet, and especially women. In fact, there are actually 1.5 billion women in these countries who are using mobile internet, but this figure is much higher for men. So 1.75 billion men in these countries use mobile internet. This is what we call the mobile gender gap, and this is what we're going to be talking about today. So a really warm welcome to the launch of our Mobile Gender Gap Report 2025. It's great to have so many of you joining for us today from all over the world. I've seen you joining on the chat, including many of our partners who we've had the pleasure of working with on this journey. So a big shout out to all of you. Please do share in the chat where you're joining from. It'd be lovely to hear. I'm joining from London today. My name's Dominica Lindsay, and I'm Senior Director on the Connected Women team. And I'm honoured to be your host today. We've been publishing this report annually for a number of years now, and a huge thank you to our funders who have also helped to make this all possible. The UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, the Swedish International Development Corporation Agency, and also very grateful to the Gates Foundation, who also contributed to this research. Unfortunately, our latest data shows that it's not great news this year, and you'll hear more on this from our speakers in a moment, and also their thoughts on what we can do to turn this around. So first up, I'd like to give the floor to Vivek Bajranath to say a few words. Vivek is our brand new Director General at the GSMA. Over to you, Vivek.
Thank you, Dominica, and hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome you to the launch of the GSMA Mobile Gender Gap Report. I think the video we've just watched is a powerful reminder of why closing this gap is so important. For millions of people, especially women, the mobile phone is much more than a device. It's a gateway to vital information, services, and empowerment. But for many, it's still out of reach. And that is why this report is so important. So, what news can I share today? Lots will be covered in the session, but there are three key things I want to highlight. First, the numbers. And sadly this year, it is not good news. Our latest data shows that while more women are using mobile internet than ever before, once again, progress has stalled. Today, women in low and middle income countries are 14% less likely than men to use mobile internet. And that means 235 million fewer women than men are using mobile internet. So consider that for a moment. All those missed opportunities for women to access information, support, and services that could open so many doors for them. And it's not just a missed opportunity for the women, it's a missed economic opportunity too, which brings me to my second point. Our analysis estimates that closing the gender gap in mobile internet adoption in low and middle income countries could add $1.3 trillion in additional GDP between 2023 and 2030. And closing the gender gap in mobile ownership and use could deliver $230 billion in additional revenue to the mobile industry. These are numbers that we simply cannot afford to ignore. And this brings me to my third point. What should we do? Well, I think it's clear. The mobile gender gap will not close on its own. The barriers are vast and varied, from handset affordability to restrictive social norms. And so we all have to work together as policymakers, mobile operators, the development community, and others if we want to reach our goal. Now, the good news is that we've already seen what works, and we need to do more of this. First, we need data on the scale of the issue and the barriers faced by women to inform our actions, and that is exactly what this report is helping to provide. Second, we need to set specific gender equity targets. The GSMA Connected Women Commitment Initiative is a great example of this. Today, over 50 operators have set specific organizational targets to reach more women with mobile internet and/or mobile money services. And together, they have indeed reached over 80 million additional women since 2016. So that's a clear example of how setting organizational targets can indeed drive impact. And third, we need to focus on holistic solutions to address the barriers that women face. Many of our members are already working on solutions like providing digital skills training that targets women, and our mobile internet skills training toolkit, for instance, has been used by partners to train more than 75 million people, many of them women, with the basic skills they need to use mobile internet. Members and partners are also working on improving the affordability of internet-enabled devices through initiatives like the handset financing schemes, increasing awareness of the benefits of mobile internet and mobile money for women through marketing campaigns, improving safety and security by allowing customers to privately recharge their credit or data to minimize the risk of harassment, and ensuring that services are relevant for women by adapting mainstream products to better meet the needs of women. These are just a few examples, but there are so many more. Ultimately, what is most effective are solutions that address all the barriers together, like developing an affordable handset scheme that includes digital skills training, has content on the handset that's relevant for women, and is marketed to appeal to women and their needs. It's not going to be easy, but it is vital that we get this right. So yes, the numbers have stalled, but I know we can get back on track if we increase our focus investment and keep working together. And I truly believe that we can accelerate our efforts and close the mobile gender gap once and for all. Today, we have a distinguished lineup of experts to share their insights on all of this. So let me hand back to Dominica to get the show on the road. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vivek, for kicking us off today and helping us appreciate the importance of this topic. So next up, I'm delighted to introduce my colleague, Nadia Jeffrie, Senior Insights Manager and lead author of this year's Mobile Gender Gap Report. She'll be taking us through the key findings today. And if you have any questions for her or our team, please use the LinkedIn chat box throughout today and we'll try our best to answer them in the chat. Over to you, Nadia.
Thanks, Dominica. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for joining our session today. I'm Nadia Jeffrie, and I'm going to be sharing with you the key findings from our Mobile Gender Gap Report 2025. So the Mobile Gender Gap Report series is an annual report that we've been publishing for the last 8 years, enabling us to comment on trends in the gender gap from across low and middle income countries, or LMICs. The findings in our latest and previous reports are drawn primarily from the GSMA Consumer Survey and are supplemented by other third-party data. This is a nationally representative survey we have conducted face-to-face each year since 2017, with the most recent survey covering 15 LMICs at the end of 2024. It gathered critical data on the mobile gender gap and allows us to continue monitoring women's access to and use of mobile and how this compares to men. One of the things we've been able to track is the mobile internet gender gap across LMICs. So let's dive into the data and see how this gap has changed over time. So on the left of this graph, you can see that from 2017 to 2020, the gender gap in mobile internet adoption consistently narrowed to 15%. But this gap widened slightly in 2021 and 2022, and progress had stalled. And last year on International Women's Day, we shared that the mobile internet gender gap narrowed back to 15% in 2023, the same level as it was in 2020, due to women adopting it at a faster rate than men. This was great news and represented a promising shift compared to the previous 2 years, and we of course hoped that this momentum would continue. Unfortunately, our latest data shows that in 2024, progress in closing this gender gap has stalled once again, and the figure remains relatively unchanged at 14%. This means that women in LMICs are 14% less likely than men to use mobile internet. And this translates into 235 million fewer women than men using mobile internet across LMICs. It's also concerning to note that women's rate of mobile internet adoption has slowed over the last year, while men's has remained relatively unchanged. So in 2023, the number of women in LMICs using mobile internet increased by 85 million, but in 2024, this figure was only 50 million. By comparison, a similar number of men in LMICs adopted mobile internet in both 2023 and 2024, around 35 million in each year. So in order to close this substantial and persistent gap, it's important to understand where we should focus our efforts. So let's look at where the gender gaps are biggest. These gender gaps vary widely by region and country, but of the 885 million women across LMICs who do not use mobile internet, around 60% live in South Asia or Sub-Saharan Africa. And these are also the regions with the two largest gender gaps at 32% and 29% respectively. By comparison, the mobile internet gender gap is much smaller in other regions and as low as -1% in Latin America and the Caribbean. In terms of how these gender gaps have changed in these regions, the latest data shows that in South Asia, despite the gender gap narrowing in 2023, it didn't shift materially in 2024. And this year, the only region where there was any progress in closing the mobile internet gender gap was Sub-Saharan Africa, where this gap continued to narrow promisingly from 36% in 2022 to 32% in 2023, and now stands at 29% in 2024. This is important progress, given there are still around 205 million women in the region who remain unconnected. At a country level, there were also differing trends, with some countries showing minimal change, but others showing very positive progress. And most notably, the gender gap in Pakistan narrowed significantly in 2024, more than any other survey country, due to women adopting mobile internet at a much faster rate than men. Now, let's take a look at the gender gaps along the mobile internet user journey and what's stopping women and men from moving along that journey. The mobile internet user journey is a simple framework that we use to understand what's preventing women from owning a mobile phone all the way through to using mobile internet regularly and accessing its full potential. The gender gap tends to widen at each stage in this journey, meaning men are more likely than women to progress along it. The gender gap in mobile ownership of any type of handset is 8% across LMICs, and this figure has been similar for a number of years, highlighting that those who still do not have a mobile phone are proving difficult to reach. Moving now to awareness of mobile internet, whilst women are still less likely than men to be aware of it, awareness levels are relatively high in most survey countries. However, mobile internet awareness does not always translate into adoption, and there are many people, particularly women, who are aware of mobile internet but do not use it, suggesting other barriers are preventing them from doing so. People are typically aware of mobile internet before owning an internet-enabled phone, and there are several reasons why awareness often precedes owning an internet-enabled phone. This might be because it's unlikely to invest in these more sophisticated and expensive devices without first knowing about mobile internet and its benefits. And in the majority of our survey countries, most people tend to drop off between these two stages, so between mobile internet awareness and internet-enabled phone ownership, particularly women. The next stage is especially important to look at because what type of handset people own affects whether and how someone uses the internet. So women typically own more basic handsets than men and are 14% less likely to own a smartphone, a gender gap that also remained unchanged in 2024. And then we have that mobile internet gender gap I spoke to earlier, standing at 14%. Beyond mobile internet adoption, it's also important to compare how regularly women and men use mobile internet and whether it's meeting their life needs to the same extent. So despite the persistent mobile internet gender gap, it's in most survey countries, once men and women become mobile internet users, the vast majority tend to use it every day. But most of these daily users, especially women, only use it for a limited range of purposes. In order to tackle that stubborn mobile internet adoption gender gap, it's important to understand what stops women and men from starting to use it. So we asked those who were already aware of mobile internet but didn't use it, regardless of whether or not they already owned a phone, what was stopping them from using mobile internet for the first time. And across our survey countries, our research found that the top barrier preventing these women from adopting it was affordability, primarily of internet-enabled handsets. And the next most reported barrier beyond awareness is a lack of literacy and digital skills. And these are the same barriers for men, but millions more women face these barriers because they are much more likely to be offline. Women also tend to experience these barriers more acutely due to social norms and structural inequalities, including disparities in income and education. Once men and women do use mobile internet, the top barrier that they says stops them from using it more tends to be safety and security concerns. And this was in fact one of the top 3 reported barriers for women mobile internet users in all survey countries and for men in almost all. Interestingly, high levels of reported safety and security concerns at the country level tend to correlate with high levels of mobile internet adoption. For example, the 2 countries with the highest levels of mobile internet adoption in our sample, Mexico and the Philippines, are also the countries with the highest proportion of male and female mobile internet users reporting safety and security concerns as their top barrier to further use. And this correlation is likely because as more people come online, digital threats become more common, increasing both the awareness and the concerns of these harms. And addressing these concerns is essential. As people come online, they need to be confident that they can keep themselves, their families, and their personal information safe, and ultimately reap the full benefits of mobile internet. The second most reported barrier to further mobile internet use was affordability, and this was primarily of data, but also the affordability of internet-enabled handsets. It's important to note that handsets and data are already less affordable for women than men due to issues such as the gender pay gap and women's lower employment rates. So with affordability of internet-enabled phones being such a significant barrier to mobile internet adoption and use for both men and women, this year we wanted to better understand what exactly people most valued in these devices beyond price. So we asked respondents who already owned an internet-enabled phone or did not yet own one, but reported they were likely to get one in the next 2 years, how important they considered 13 different device features that are shown on this slide. Across survey countries, the most valued features in an internet-enabled phone, apart from price, were related to performance, functionality, and longevity of the device, and on the left-hand side of this graph. This was rather than aesthetics, physical features, or brand reputation on the right-hand side. And in fact, these preferences were quite similar regardless of gender, as you can see here with women in the red bars and men in the black. So addressing all of these barriers that women face to being able to adopt and use mobile internet to meet their life needs is a challenge. However, the potential socioeconomic benefits of doing so are substantial. As Vivek mentioned, our analysis has found that closing the gender gap in mobile internet adoption in LMICs from 2023 to 2030 would add $1.3 trillion in additional GDP, a huge opportunity for economies. Access and use of mobile can also transform women's lives. Closing the mobile gender gap will also benefit industry and society more broadly and contribute to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, including those related to education, health, poverty reduction, and of course, gender equality. So, what can stakeholders do to address the mobile gender gap? Our full report provides more specific recommendations for different stakeholders, but here are 4 high-level actions to consider. Firstly, ensure that there is a focus on gender equality and reaching women at the organizational and policy level through senior leaders championing the issue and setting gender-specific targets. Gender disaggregated data is crucial for measuring the gender gap and informing investments and action to address it. Whilst our survey fills important data gaps, much more data is needed to understand women's mobile use, their needs, and the barriers that they face, especially in different contexts and among specific groups. When it comes to designing and implementing mobile-related products, services, policies, and initiatives, stakeholders should ensure that women's needs, circumstances, and challenges are explicitly addressed. So this includes addressing the key barriers faced by women, as well as a consideration of the social norms that can contribute to women experiencing these barriers more acutely. And finally, an increased focus, investment, and collaboration are required from all stakeholders, working together to ensure that women are not left behind. Partnership is crucial as the barriers that women face are complex and they are interrelated. So the mobile gender gap is not going to close on its own, and the latest data highlights that we cannot be complacent, and it's a clear call to action. If you want to know more, you can read the full report, which is out today, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Nadia, for taking us through the findings, and a huge thank you to everyone else at the GSMA who was involved in this report or in this launch, including Bora, Jacob, Calvin, Claire, Rosie, Simran, Orla, Matt, Pippa, Kim, Abby, Gagan, Maddie, Denna, also our research partner Ipsos, and also the men and women in the field who kindly agreed to be interviewed. We only had time today to share some of the findings, but we have data from 15 countries in the report this year. So I'd really encourage you to take a look. I think someone from my team has kindly posted these in the chat. And what's quite exciting is that we've been able to include Tanzania and the Philippines for the first time in a few years, which may be of interest to those of you who live or work in these countries. Next up, I'm delighted to hand over to Claire Sibthorpe, head of our digital inclusion team. Claire is going to be speaking to Doreen Bogdan-Martin, who is kindly joining us for the 5th year running to share her thoughts on our latest data. Doreen is Secretary General of the ITU and a great friend of our programme. So over to you, Claire.
Secretary General, it's really thrilled to have you here to join us again to reflect on our latest data from the Mobile Gender Gap report. We saw that after the progress in closing the gender gap had stalled after the period after COVID, and last year when we talked it looked a bit more positive. However, this year we're seeing that the mobile internet gender gap has not really changed, and women's rate of mobile internet adoption has slowed. So that's quite worrying. I was wondering, from your perspective, why do you feel that it's so hard to move this needle and really drive like very significant reductions?
Well, let me start, Claire. Thank you so much for having me back. It's great to be here, and I want to congratulate you and also GSMA on this year's report. I think for me, this report kind of helps as being like an annual checkpoint to let us know where we are and how far we need to go. Um, Progress on closing the digital gender gap, as you just described, it's been uneven. We have progress quickly in some parts of the world, but other regions are struggling to close the gap, and we've seen some stagnation. We've seen slower growth rates, and unfortunately, in those places, those are the places um, where closing that gap can benefit women and girls the most. I think where the gaps are persisting, um, in many ways, they're sort of deeply structural. That gap, that digital gap, can correlate with many other gender gaps, gaps in opportunities when it comes to education, when it comes to income, when it comes to digital skills, and also, as we know, cultural norms can also have a great influence. I think another challenge rests with affordability, the affordability of devices and also data packages. That's a big barrier. Also, once online, we still have challenges when it comes to confidence and security concerns. That also tends to limit use. And I think it's also important to remember that we need to be focused on investments. We still need investments in digital infrastructure, but also in areas that affect what this infrastructure can actually deliver. So we need investment in things like device and data affordability, and also digital and cybersecurity skills. That skilling piece is also fundamental. I think we should always keep top of mind that the people able to benefit most from connectivity are often those that have the least exposure or experience with technology.
Great. And as you say, there's many reasons why we're now seeing this sort of, again, stalled rates of digital inclusion and stalled progress. So I was wondering, like, if you were to think about what we could do to really just move the needle, and maybe what ITU specifically as well could do, what would you say where we should focus our efforts?
Well, I would urge all governments and organizations to make women and girls a priority when it comes to their digital development strategies. We at the ITU are working towards meaningful connectivity and sustainable digital transformation for all. That for all means all people, regardless of their age, their gender, their economic status. We really need to ensure that everyone is connected. I think it's also important to recognize that if we're only looking at internet adoption, we're actually setting the bar too low, because we want to make sure that that connectivity is meaningful to make a real difference in women's lives, because we know that digital can deliver healthcare, education, financial services, and also new income opportunities. And access, of course, should help women feel safer and not more vulnerable. I think also the other important thing to keep in mind of what we have to do is when it comes to data, when it comes to statistics, like GSMA, statistics are key for ITU, because we can only manage what we measure. And that measurement, of course, informs our actions, keeping our strategies evidence-based. Data can also be very powerful in keeping everybody focused on the challenge. It keeps the issue at the top of the global development agenda. Many countries still lack the basic data disaggregation by gender, uh, let alone more sophisticated metrics such as how women use digital tools or their level of digital skills. So that also impacts targeted action. It makes it quite difficult, and that's why ITU not only collects and publishes our annual facts and figures report, but we're also working to support countries directly to strengthen those data systems through capacity building and technical assistance. I also think that to drive real impact, we also need to be very focused on skilling. That's something that the ITU is focused on, that we're working with you, Claire, through the Equals Global Partnership that's aiming to equip 100 million women and girls with the digital skills, the resources, and the opportunities that they need so that they can be active contributors in the digital economy. We've spoken about the persistent digital gap, that it's rooted in structural inequalities. We also need to ensure that women are given opportunities for better education, because that is such a transformative force for sustainable development. I'll stop there.
Great. Thanks. I completely agree. I mean, like you, we very much believe in data, and also that it's not just about adoption of the internet, which is also why in our report we talk about how they're using it and the barriers to further use. So it's great to be partnered with ITU and also in many of these efforts, and it's great to hear everything that you're doing. Super valuable. We don't have a lot of time. This is so I was just wondering if you had one last piece of advice or one word for everybody who's listening here today, what would it be?
I would say transformation demands more than good intentions. It requires leadership, investment, and courage. And that's what we need, Claire. If we're going to close this digital gender gap, we need that leadership, we need that investment, we need that courage. And why do we need it? Well, it's good for women, it's good for girls, it's good for society, but let's not forget it's also good for the economy. It makes good economic sense. We're leaving 1.3 trillion US dollars in global GDP on the table if we fail to close that mobile gender gap by 2030. And that is humanity's collective loss, not just women's.
Thank you. And here, that's great. Thank you so much for your time, Doreen, and for being such a great champion and advocate of all this work. So thanks for your time.
Thanks to you, Claire.
Thank you both, and thank you, Secretary General, for sharing many of the challenges we face and where you think we should be focusing. And it was really great to hear all the things that ITU is doing. And I also really like when you said transformation demands more than good intentions. It requires leadership, investment, and courage. And next up, we have two speakers who, in my opinion, have shown great leadership in this space. They've made significant investments, they've shown courage, and they've made bold commitments to reach women as part of our Connected Women Commitment Initiative. And they've also not been afraid to try something different and to talk about the failures and successes that they've had on their journeys. So we're really excited to be talking to them as part of this launch. So the first of these speakers who I'd like to welcome is Hassan Shabba, CEO of Axian Telecom. Axian operates in a number of countries across Africa, and Claire Sibthorpe was able to catch up with Hassan last week.
Thank you so much for joining us. So I'll just get right into it and ask you about your reactions to this year's findings, and I was just really curious to hear what you think, and also if there were any surprises in what you saw.
First, hi Claire, nice meeting you, and thank you for having me. I mean, it was really interesting, what I read in the report, but it's always alarming to see how persistent and deeply rooted the gender gap remains. I mean, the reports like the mobile gender gap are critical for providing us with data-driven insights that help us as operators and telecom groups to design more effective targeted solutions to address the underlying causes of these gender gaps. I mean, overall, while the pace of advancing digital transformation is not as rapid as we would like it to be, but still, I mean, because usually I like to be positive about things, especially about prospect in Africa and specifically about the gender equality and the digital inclusion. It's encouraging to see that the different initiatives and efforts that are being adopted by many players in the industry, including ourselves, are slightly paying off, but we still have a long way to go, particularly in Africa. I strongly believe that multi-stakeholders collaboration is essential to drive meaningful progress. It takes commitment by businesses combined with policies that empower investment and foster growth. When I refer to investment, I'm referring to investment in the women empowerment. We believe at Axian that the private sector is uniquely positioned to act in the interests of unconnected women. As mobile operator, we are dedicated to connecting women because we believe we have a duty to do so. It is our responsibility. We genuinely, it is in our DNA that it is our responsibility to ensure no one is left behind in this digital revolution, and becomes the more the technology evolves, the more it becomes crucial that no one should left be behind. Otherwise, the social gap will become bigger and bigger and bigger in the years to come. Hope I was able to cover your question.
No, thanks. It's very good, and I completely agree. It takes many stakeholders to work on this. I was wondering, I just wanted to pick up on one thing you said. You said we've been doing a lot of work in this area, so I just wanted to pick up on that a bit. So our latest data, as you've seen, shows that affordability is still a top barrier to mobile internet adoption across sub-Saharan Africa. And I know that at Axian, you've been doing explore different ways to address, to make handsets more affordable and particularly reaching women. And I'd love to hear from you what you think is working well, and maybe where what isn't working as well, and your thoughts on how we can tackle that particular barrier.
Very interesting question. At Axian, as we are a Pan-African company, we understand very well and clearly our role in advancing lives, particularly when it comes to women in Africa. Accessing mobile internet carries significant socio-economic benefits, offering women, I don't need to really elaborate a lot, but we all know that it offers financial independence and, most important, the ability to contribute to national economies. One of the main problems, as you highlighted, is the affordability, which remains one of the most significant barriers to connectivity. If we do the right things in order to address this challenge, when we are able to close this gender gap in mobile internet adoption in Africa and our region in particular, we can add around $1.3 trillion to the GDP. And this highlights both the urgency and the opportunity that we have on hand. We tested, in different operations, we tested several approaches to address the challenge, which is the affordability again. One that has delivered promising results involves converging low-cost smartphones with affordable financing plans that include data. As the aim was not just to improve access to smartphones in isolation, but to ensure that internet access was equally affordable and sustained. Because if you give him a smartphone, but you don't give him the tool or the subscriber, and in our case, women, we don't give him as well an affordable access to the internet, it will be a smartphone's a dummy machine. While the main purpose of having a smartphone is to have access to data and to the digital world. So through our integrated device financing solutions, we bundled low-cost smartphones with daily data usage for almost under $0.25 per day. And we got really very positive results where in 6 months we reached 200,000 users. More than half of them were women. I don't want to call it a breakthrough, but the turnaround was the daily micro payment model that significantly reduced the upfront cost barrier, making smartphone ownership more accessible and manageable for individuals in low-income areas. We also streamlined repayments through mobile money, which proved especially helpful for users in rural and remote locations where they don't have access to banks or to facilities, or even to ATM. So mobile money was one of the main channels for them to transact and to take advantage of such a offer. A key factor in the program's as well success was our partnership with local women's association. And this goes back to what I said, we need to work together. I mean, private sector, also NGOs, and policymakers in order to be able to improve the acceleration of adoption of women of women to smartphone and mainly to the digital world. This relationship that we were able to build actually created a trust within communities and allowed us to deliver basic digital literacy training alongside device distribution. This holistic approach, integrating affordability, also connectivity, education, helped more people, particularly women, come online. In doing so, it supported access to essential services and opened, what we are all expecting from this accessibility pathways to greater economic opportunity where they were, at the end, when you go to the digital world, we all know it's not a secret, you get access to knowledge and you get access to more opportunities of growing your standard of living via more economical opportunities. But there were also some hard lessons because offering discounted entry-level smartphones at the beginning appeared to be very straightforward. We just have a lower handset and then things are resolved, while the reality proved us to be different. The approach proved insufficient on several fronts, even with the reduced prices, the total cost, including ongoing data expenses, remained out of reach for many, particularly for women in low-income communities. More importantly, we actually underestimated the impact of limited digital literacy, which significantly hindered the effective use of smartphones among new users. We also lacked a clear understanding of the specific price threshold that would genuinely unlock purchasing power within our targeted demographic. As a result, we ended up with an adoption rates that are much lower than what we were hoping for. So we learned many lessons. The extent of economic hardship was deeper than expected. What we considered affordable affordable based on the different study, analysis, assessment, still represented a significant cost barrier for many, as many users lacked the digital skills or confidence needed to benefit from mobile internet. There were no complementary efforts to build awareness, drive behavior change, or offer user support. Because at the end, when you increase literacy, the consumer and the woman will be able at least to make her, a simple calculation. If I invest in the smartphone, what will I gain in return? And because she doesn't know, she's not aware that actually the digital world offers her so many opportunities which will allow her to have a return on investment, she won't do the investment. She won't go through this deal. She will think that she's investing in a gadget. And when you are coming from a low income community, you cannot actually entertain yourself with gadgets. While we need to show her what we learned, we need to show her that actually it's not a gadget. It's something to improve the quality of life. It's something to improve your economical situation. So this outcome reinforced the importance of taking a user-centric, ecosystem-based approach. The true affordability goes beyond device pricing, but it also requires a real understanding of financial realities and access to affordable data, the ability to use the technology with confidence and trusted with the localized support structures. Inclusive design and ongoing support must be central to any strategy that aims to drive meaningful and lasting connectivity. So we have to always take care, understand when we are targeting a segment, that's what we learned, when we are targeting a segment, we have to take into consideration those four factors. The economical reality of the people we are addressing, their level of knowledge, and who are the actors within the community that can help us actually bring those people on board, make them aware of the advantages they will get. And once we actually have this 360 degree, then we are able to develop the right product, mainly, the right value proposition that converge all those things in order to give accessibility to the deprived women from currently the connectivity and the data / internet / digital world.
So much. Thank you for sharing that, but also like the challenges you face. Really interesting and interesting to hear that how important it is to have that holistic approach. And when you did that, you were able to disproportionately reach women, which is great. So I really want to thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your insights and work that you're doing on this really important issue. If you have any final comments you want to make to this audience, feel free. I don't know if there's anything further you want to add.
Yeah, I would like to thank you again for the opportunity to participate. And we will always, as Axian Group, put this objective as a priority for us. It's part of our DNA. We are continuing experimenting with different models, with different value proposition, in order to be able to really close the gap in the markets where we are, because women inclusion is very important, and it is the main reason for the development of any economy or any society in any country. We strongly believe in that, and we're going to continue to work on that. Hopefully we will find also partners that are as passionate about this as us, and we are positive about the future. And thank you.
No, thank you so much, and thank you for those words, and we look forward to continuing to work with you. So thanks a lot for sharing all your insights and time today.
Thank you to Claire and Hassan. I enjoyed hearing the really practical recommendations that Hassan had for all of us. For example, when he was saying that even if you offer low-cost internet-enabled handsets, some women may not know how to use them or understand why they should be spending their precious money on one, and therefore how it's important to show them how to use it, and that it's not just a gadget, but a tool that can improve their livelihoods and quality of life overall. And also he was saying how we need to give them ongoing support to realise these benefits. And this all resonates a lot with what we've seen in our work as well. So thank you for that, Hassan. Now we're going to turn to Pakistan. As you heard from Nadia earlier, the gender gap in mobile internet narrowed more there than any other survey country over the last year. And this comes at a time when a range of stakeholders in the country have been prioritising this topic, including the government of Pakistan, the mobile industry, and a number of other organisations across the country. And our next speaker heads up one of the mobile operators in Pakistan. So I'm delighted to introduce Amir Ibrahim, CEO of Jazz. Claire was able to catch up with him at MWC Barcelona earlier this year.
Hi, Maria. So nice to be here with you, and thank you so much for giving your time. I know it's a very busy time. So we just heard about the latest figures from the Mobile Gender Gap Report, and we saw that there were not really a notable change in the mobile internet gender gap across low-income countries in the last year. But Pakistan is a different story. We saw a really big drop in that gender gap, and I know you have made massive commitments and really focused on this, and there's been a lot of work in Pakistan. Just wondering a bit what makes you commit to this, and what have you been doing to help drive some of this effort?
Well, first of all, Claire, thanks for having me over here. Always a pleasure to talk to you. Always a pleasure to be here at MWC here in Barcelona. And one of the things that we did right was to make a public commitment, and that actually happened over here about 5 years ago. I was at one of the forums with you, and I said, listen, gender forum, and we said we're going to be not just talking about gender, we're going to be gender intentional. So I made a commitment that by the end of this decade, actually I said that by 2025, 30% of our GSM customers would be women. And I think the starting number was less than 20%. And I had no idea how we're going to get to 25%. But I think making a public promise actually does help. It does put pressure on me. And even if you get closer to that ambition, you will fail in achieving something a lot more glorious than had you not made that commitment. So I think sometimes making public declarations and public promises puts that extra pressure on you that acts like a good pressure. And I think that's what we did when it came to our mobile services. And we have done something similar with our mobile financial services. And by the end of the decade, I want to make sure that 50% of the people who open an account on Jazz Cash are actually going to be women. And nobody knows of the challenges of how women have been historically disenfranchised and marginalized in Pakistan than somebody coming from that country. So I think we're blessed to be in the industries that we operate in, and making that public declaration made a lot of effort, and we championed the cause. And I'm really delighted to hear that the results are positive.
Yeah, I remember when we made those commitments together, you made that, and it was fantastic that we're now here a few years later and we're seeing such a drop, so that's fantastic. I just want to go back a little bit to the report. So the report, we looked at what are the barriers women are facing to digital inclusion, and our research was highlighted that it's sort of around literacy and skills, sort of family approval, social norms issues, and things around affordability. Is that what you saw in the report? Does that resonate with what you're seeing in?
Despite the fact that we champion these causes, I'm still an urban Pakistani, a male urban Pakistani. But what we do have is we have employed a number of people who actually do the outreach programs. So we employ both skills as well as techniques that help us go into the environment, in the suburban, rural environments where the barriers are perhaps invisible even to us living in Pakistan. So, talking about what we have done is really starting from that commitment to make sure that the barriers are fully understood. And the barriers are not always financial. A lot of times they're actually social norms. And it's very difficult for a telecom operator to fix social norms in a short period of time. I can make the smartphones more affordable, or I can give a SIM away for free. But if the household feels that smartphone ownership is a dangerous thing for a woman, then I can't really break that barrier. So we have to employ skills that are relevant in that particular environment. And that's where the outreach program comes in. And we have colleagues who actually go to a small village, they talk with the village elderly people, and they try to educate how people can actually benefit from the internet while having safety and security. And the concerns are somewhat similar to what you may have elsewhere in the world also, which is about internet safety, vulnerability, data leakages, photos being stolen. And I think in a conservative environment like Pakistan, those barriers compound the affordability barriers. So we had to address not only the affordability thing, but also go down to address the cultural issues. And those issues take a whole lot longer.
And what have you learned from, because obviously there's been difference and impact. These are very hard challenges. So what are some of the key learnings that you've had?
I think one of the key learnings is that you just can't rely on a cookie cutter approach. Initially, we all felt that maybe it's an affordability issue. As I interact with many other people who are also addressing the gender issues, women have less disposable income. Buying a smartphone was more difficult, being on prepaid and expensive tariff rates, so they were addressing those issues. I think the learning for us has been you have to be committed to solve the problem, and don't go with a preconceived notion on what the solution might be, and be willing to tailor make the solution in the environment. And even in the context of Pakistan, there are places where affordability is an issue. So we do the right intervention when it comes to affordability, and coming up with installment plans for women owning smartphones. And then there are times when the cultural norms are the issue. And there you actually have to enable the men to be able to empower the women. It's a joint effort. It's not just addressing and talking to the women. You have to talk to the men. You have to talk to the fathers, the brothers, the husbands, the sons, the village elders. So you have to actually have a comprehensive program. But I think the key learning is that don't be fixated on one solution because it works somewhere else.
I see. So, and also taking that holistic approach of like looking at the range of issues. That's really interesting, and it's great to see that we're seeing a movement. Obviously, there's a lot more to go, but the fact that it's going in that direction is really amazing. So, huge congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And I know we don't have a ton of time, so just like if you were to give one sort of key recommendation or sort of thing that you wanted to share with the audience, what would that one piece of advice that you would give?
Well, listen, the world is not equal. For countries, frontier markets like Pakistan, we can't really unleash our potential as a country. If you have 50% of the population not fully engaged in the economy, if they are marginalized for whatever reason, in whatever capacity, you as a country are being held back. So I've taken it more nationalistically speaking, but I think it's not only the right thing to do from a moral perspective, it's the right thing to do from so many other perspectives, from economic perspectives, from empowerment perspectives. So whoever is listening to this conversation, my message would just be that the world deserves equality. We will perhaps not get there, but we can create a more equitable world.
Yeah, and I think with Pakistan we show that if you do these intentional targeted efforts, it is possible to make a difference. So it's inspiring, and hopefully others who are listening to our chat will also be inspired, and similarly we'll have other conversations.
I hope so too. And you guys are doing a great job at GSMA in terms of creating that awareness, engaging in the dialogue. These are much needed dialogues. And I think what we sit on is a huge equalizer. The tool, the smartphone in our hands, is one of the biggest equalizing forces in the world. It's a remote control to our lives, and I think the combination of financial services and smartphone ownership gives women in the world the best chance to move forward.
I agree. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
All right, great chatting with you again.
Thank you to Claire and Amir for sharing his thoughts and advice, and for giving us a great taste of all the things that Jazz has been doing over the years to reach women. And one important theme that we heard from Amir, and in fact from all of our speakers today, is the need to take a holistic approach when we're trying to improve digital inclusion for women. So aiming to tackle all the barriers that women face simultaneously, or at least the biggest ones. And this, of course, can be hard to do. But if we partner together, it can be made easier. And if we work together and bring our different strengths to the table. So I would ask all of you listening today to keep this issue top of mind in your work and collaborate with others to move the needle. And then hopefully this time next year, we'll have some good news to share. So thank you all so much for listening today. And a huge thank you again to all of our wonderful speakers today, Vivek, Nadia, Claire, Doreen, Hassan, and Amir.